Hey Fit Pros, before we get to this new episode in the KIPS podcast, I want to quickly share about our newest course on KIPS, Social Media for Fitness Professionals. This course is all about the fundamentals. As a Fit Pro, you know how fundamental exercises are important for building a foundation within an exercise program, and that's what we're going to be doing in this course. Authored by me, Tyler Valencia, I go through the stats involving all the major social media platforms and then show you step by step how to do it. In the first lecture, I built a fictitious business branding kit with a new logo, color wheel, and font. And then we use those to set up new Facebook pages, start a private group, how to use Creator Studio, set up a basic Facebook ad, set up an Instagram, how to post on Instagram, and how to set up a YouTube channel. We do it all in this course, and one of the best parts is you can get your continuing education credits. Head to the link in the description to find out more. Let's get to the show. Welcome to episode 73 of the KIPS podcast. My name is Tyler Valencia, and I'm the president of KIPS and Time to Train Fitness. We have a discussion episode in the podcast. And this is one that kind of came from being asked this question pretty recently in one of the KIPS podcast episodes. I believe it was either the episode with guest Emily Stewart or with guest Kate Finnemore. One of the guests asked me about licensure and my opinion on it. And to be honest, I didn't really have a suggestion or an answer for it. I kind of just gave my thoughts on it. And it's an interesting one. And this is, should the fitness industry go towards a licensure? If you're unfamiliar with the term, think of maybe physical therapy. With physical therapy, and if you want to become one, you tend to have to take an exam through the state. And with that, your license allows you to practice physical therapy, apply your techniques with clients. With the fitness industry, we don't have really a license, even though we see some newcomers or maybe even existing fitness instructors use the term license. That's not really the correct term there. We have certifications. You take a certification exam in order to become a personal trainer. And this is a topic that it's an interesting one because of how long it's been talked about in the background and in settings that are professional settings. Should our industry go towards licensure? I remember 10 plus years ago when I was in my undergrad, it was a conversation brought up in a course. I remember one of my professors who has been a guest on the podcast, who's recently actually won Ideas Fitness Leader. And she was talking about this with us, with students, about licensure and the potential of it and if it will actually come to fruition. So when this was brought up in an episode, I kind of thought that it might be good to talk about it and maybe actually get some feedback and how long it's kind of taken for anything to really happen, and nothing has actually happened at all. But that's kind of how fitness is. It's not important until it's serious. It's kind of sad, but it's true. But with licensure, I don't know what the outcome is. And so that's going to be what we're going to talk about later on in this episode. But before we get there, a little bit of admin work. If you are interested, we have a sale going on with KIPS at the time of release. It is the middle of October at the moment, and you can save 25% on all our courses. That's the only admin work that we have in this episode. So with this episode, I'm going to take it from 4 different sides and maybe even start a conversation with it, whether it's on social media or if you are inside our private Facebook group that is Fitness Builder Plus. Maybe share your feedback, share your insight on the topic. Maybe you have been in an industry that requires licensure. Maybe you have feedback based off your experiences, which everybody has a different one, whether they're a group exercise instructor, fitness instructor, manager, GM, whatever that might be. And those 4 areas that I'm going to approach this from, there's the individual. So the individual, it's someone taking classes at home or in person. And the reason why I'm going to talk about this one is that that's why we do this. That's why we create education. That's why we get more education. That's why we get more certifications. That's why we enter this industry, right? To help individuals. So I'm going to give some insight into the individual side. Then I'm going to talk about the educational side. So providers who make education. Next, fitness instructors, whether you're a personal trainer, you're a fitness instructor, and also if you're doing it at home or in person. And then lastly, from the gym side or facilities that hire instructors. So let's start this from the individual's perspective. And the big question would be, does it make better workouts from them, right? Shouldn't that be the main perspective, the real big one, that would this outcome create better workouts from them? Would they become more healthier? Would they move better? All things that we try to pursue with our education as a fitness professional. We want to be able to create better programs. We want to be able to help more people. So does that outcome come from licensure? And the questions to ask that come from the other side is, do they care? Do they really care? Is the cheapest option still the most popular option? And when we think about that, look at the boom of online workouts. Online workouts are done at home. I'm not saying that there's any negative towards these. I own a company that does online workouts. But think about it. People do free ones. They do things from home. And yet group fitness is probably the biggest thing for gyms. And that's on the cheaper side. Not many people purchase personal training. The majority does not purchase $100 per session packages. They do not do that. They do free group exercise. I think that's one of the things that actually was talked about in one of the more recent episodes as well. Group fitness is one of the main reasons why people join gyms. I know that some people might want you to think otherwise, but that's really the truth of it, is group fitness. So that's a cheaper option. And so if we went towards licensure and yet workouts become better and they become more expensive, does that help more people? That's something to think about. Now, the next part inside of this, from the individual perspective, is that there might now be the potential for insurance to help with training. I believe I've heard about some insurances that do pay for personal training sessions, and it's not something that's as widespread, I believe. But does insurance want that to happen now? Do they want people to be able to purchase personal training with their health insurance to make them healthier? I know that's one of those things where you talk about it, you say it out loud, even as I just said it now. It almost sounds like too much sense that people could become healthier, they could get good training, they could move better, and they could use their insurance money. It sounds like a no-brainer, but I'm not in that industry. That's not something that I know much about. And so I'm not going to really dive too much into it. Maybe somebody listening might have more perspective on that could provide something that we could talk about in the future, but that just sounds like too much sense. So keep that one in the back of your head right there. So with all of this that we're talking about with the individual now, the individual perspective, does better instruction mean it's better? I know that's almost redundant there. Does better instruction mean that it's better for everybody? And let me expand on that. Don't forget that the overwhelming majority of people don't even have exercise on their radar. That's a fact there. The majority of people don't have exercise on their radar. It's not a part of their daily life, their weekly life, monthly. It's just not a part of their lives. So talking about licensure, a big step like that, is it really going to be something that moves the measuring stick? Is it really something that push people to put it on their radar? Is it going to help more people? Is it the better route for them first? Add on top of that the overwhelming majority of people don't even go to gyms. So first I said that the overwhelming majority don't have exercise on the radar. Add on top of that now, the overwhelming majority of people don't even go to gyms. So is this a step that is important for them? And let's take it even further now. If there's one piece that now here's my feedback here. If there's one piece that I could add into this, that would be, is there a way to provide better, credible knowledge to the masses? And this is something that I've thought about over the last month and a half, is that it's not really that easy for the common person, the person that doesn't really know anything about exercise, to go find information that isn't a sales pitch. Now, YouTube is kind of a sales pitch. I have a YouTube business that's a workout business, and we do provide free workouts that hopefully help people, that hopefully helps them get healthier. And we try to have that perspective that it's no sales pitch. On the YouTube channel, there's nothing that we're selling. You could just do the workout and then that's it. But is there easily accessible information to the masses that can help them? If you think about government-based sites, are they easy to digest? Is it something that someone can go find, easily find, click on a link, and they're going to get information? When I think about these things, I think about maybe the ACSM guidelines, which don't really provide insight. Things like individuals should perform moderate to vigorous activity on most days. What does that even mean for the common person? If you're not a fit pro, do you know what that means? Do you know what vigorous activity means? Do you know what moderate activity means? Do you know if you even fit into that category? Where do you start? So is that really the best step for the individual? Is things to go licensure that potentially you get better instruction? Is that maybe a better step that we find better ways to get education to the masses that can help them with the steps? That's not a sales pitch. That's not a sales pitch from a gym, a sales pitch from a instructor, an influencer, that it's maybe just information on here are some ways to start. Where are some ways that you should start if you fall into this category? So that's going to be my perspective on the individual. The next one in this episode is now going to be the educational side. Other than owning KIPS, I've worked for 3 other educational providers, and with 2 of them, I did accreditation applications. So not quite licensure, but accreditation is one of the bigger things if you are a fitness education provider, health and fitness education provider, is accreditation. And those are hefty applications. So I would say I'm pretty well versed in that area, probably more well versed than the majority. And with the education side of it, you have to think about it from a business side. Now, if licensure were to come into play, it would potentially restrict the companies who make the education for licensure. And depending upon what your outlook is on business, education, all those types of things, you could take it multiple ways. You could think that, oh, well, it's going to limit business for people, or maybe it's going to make education better. And I'm going to come back to that. But what I was actually thinking about when I was making the outline for this episode was how you don't really hear about the smaller companies, per se, like KIPS anymore. You don't really hear about those acronym businesses that maybe you saw once or twice and you're like, I've never heard of that company. You don't really hear much about those anymore. And I bring that up because would licensure reduce it more? Those ones are not really around as often. And the story that I can kind of bring into this is that I remember when I was working for one of the larger gym brands that was on the lower tier. I didn't really know the difference between all the different gym tiers at that time. And I remember I came into work one day and I saw a sign. It was a printout piece of paper right on the quote unquote trainer desk. And it said, I think it was like $99 for a 1-day workshop and you could become a personal trainer. It wasn't really for the personal trainers, more for that person that's at the gym that goes by the trainer desk and sees, oh man, I've been wanting to become a personal trainer. But it was from a company that I'd never heard of. And I believe at the time I was an intern for one of the rather bigger educational companies, but you don't see too many of those anymore. You don't really see too many of these smaller educational brands around because of the times. The times have kind of wiped them out. Things like accreditation, which was the goal of going to the accreditation realm. And I don't want to talk about these backroom stories that I've heard through my years of working for the education side, but the accreditation kind of wiped some of them out. And so you don't hear too much about those. So in my mind, that's not really a big part of the educational side component of this conversation, that it will make companies stronger. The stronger companies, they are only getting bigger these days. They're buying each other out. And that's something that if you're not too familiar with that, you could definitely find more information out there about the companies that are buying each other, that bought the corporations. Don't forget, these are corporations and they buy each other out all the time. And so that's not really part of it. And now let's go do another piece of this. So will it then limit sales? Because that's really the business part of it that will probably be most relevant, is will it limit sales for these corporations? It will probably make the requirements harder. So less students, smaller base. And the piece of that was probably more applicable to the instructor piece that, or maybe looking at the education, is does licensure then benefit the fitness industry? It makes the barrier for entry definitely harder. And that's something that, depending on where you stand, how much education you have, you might agree with that, might agree that you don't need it. But a big benefit of entering the industry is there's a low barrier. All you have to do is go take a certification and you're in. That's it. And depending on your knowledge in exercise science, and I can tell you right now that there's ways that if you are not strong in exercise science, that you could pass them. There are things that is readily available to anybody that wants to go find them. There's these things called the Exam Candidate Handbook, Procedures and Policies. And if you go look in there, you could see where each exam is weighted. Now I'm giving you insight from my times working at companies, but that if you are not strong in exercise science, go to any one of these companies, go type in Exam Candidate Handbook, and you will see the percentage breakdown of each exam. And I'm not saying don't focus on exercise science, but if you are having trouble, go look these up and you will see the percentages. And then now you can see where you need to spend your time to successfully pass each exam. And they might have ones in business. They might have one on programming, things that you're maybe stronger in that could help you out. But let me get back to the topic now that's at hand, and that's the sales. It will definitely limit the sales because that means there's less students, there's less people in that area because there's a much higher bar to enter it. And now the final question of this is, would licensure now make better education? And I'm not 100% sure on that one. That's why I started this episode saying that I don't know the outcome of this. I don't know if it would make any of these better. And better education, it's hard to say yes, because at the moment, that's one of the areas that I feel like Fit Pros, they say the best. They say this company makes the best education. This company is the best, but really it's all entry-level education. And so I can't say that's going to make better education. It's going to make a company that makes the best education because it's not where we're at right now. So I don't know that licensure would change that, but it would maybe change the requirements for being a fitness professional, for being a personal trainer, a group exercise instructor. It might now include a 4-year degree. All stuff to think about. So let's now get to the perspective that most people that are listening to this podcast, you probably fall in this, and that's the fitness instructor perspective. Whether you're a personal trainer, a group exercise instructor, or a strength coach, you might fall in this area. And this is the hardest one for me to talk about because it's hard to think that there is a population that's already working with clients, that has been working with clients. They're a fantastic instructor, and you might fall on the short end of this because a step towards licensure. And that's one of the things that is the hardest piece to answer. So what would happen to those people if licensure goes into effect? How does this population continue? What happens to them? Do they get grandfathered in? Do they continue? Do they just get a license? It's hard to say. And with instructors that don't meet the requirements for being a fitness professional, if licensure were to go into effect, we might see a huge drop off, that people might just go into another industry. They might just stop. And the flip side of that, the argument would probably be that it makes better instructors. And I'm going to say it potentially makes better instructors because I've heard and seen many fitness professionals with a long list of credentials. And I'm not going to say that I'm this amazing fitness instructor, amazing personal trainer, group exercise instructor, but I've seen instructors that have long list of credentials, long list of internships, all this kind of stuff. And yet they perform or showcase poor programming or poor instructing choices. So it's hard to say that licensure will now make it better, that these people will all be wiped out because if you are bad at your job, you're going to go away. And another piece on top of that is that we also see instructors that they share controversial points, that there's no research behind it. They don't think research is relevant when we know it's important. Those are things that are definitely possible, and this could still happen. So how could we combat that then? Would there now be a place where people get reprimanded? Maybe they get suspended. They get their license suspended. Maybe. I don't know. But that's something to think about. Inside of this now, a big thing will be the pay. Will pay now be better because you have a license? And I don't know. There are some instructors that make great money being a fitness professional. There are some that don't make that much. They work at gym chains that don't pay them well, that they do a lot of hours for bare minimum. It's always sad to hear about those things. So I don't know. Will it make it so that people get paid better? No matter what industry you're in, if you are in one that requires a license, there's always a pay scale. So would it make it easier for fitness pros to make a living in it? I don't know. But I do know that there will be less instructors that enter the industry. There will be less that come from other industries because of the requirements for it. So this is the one that if you are in this, would love to hear what you think about this topic, what you think could potentially happen, some suggestions. And remember, it's just an open conversation. Nothing that I say, you say is going to move the needle at the moment. It's just one of those things that hopefully gives more perspective, that helps the conversation, that it moves somewhere, that you get some insight into it. It's really just providing education, knowledge, and sharing. Now, the last one I'm going to talk about is the gym and other hiring institutions. So it might be a gym, you might be a fitness manager or general manager. And I know my perspective on this one is going to sound like I'm biased because I'm going to maybe say some things that are negative and they're more business oriented. So I'm just putting that out there before I get to these. But gyms will probably not want licensure. That's just my opinion on that. If licensure were to occur, it means that there's going to be a smaller base to pull from. If I was to say the majority, and remember that there are exceptions to a majority, but I would say that the majority of gyms, hiring institutions, they would be against it because it's a smaller pool and their mentality tends to be next man up, next man, woman up. That if they were to hire somebody and they don't meet the requirements, okay, fine, we'll just go find someone else. And if you're a fit pro, you know that it's not as easy, but that's how gyms tend to think more cheaper and bottom line, dollar signs over quality instruction, over quality instructors that can really bring people in. That tends to be their mentality. And like I said, there might be exceptions to it. There are exceptions to it. I got to take that back. There are exceptions to it. There are managers that do care about their instructors, that care about their people, but there also are an overwhelming majority that don't. And so their perspective would probably be that licensure would hurt their business, that it would hurt the people that they could pull into their business, that they could get into their wheel, and that they could spit them out whenever they don't need them. And if it costs more, and if it means that they're going to lose money at the end of it, they're probably going to be against it. And that's probably one of the pieces that has prevented licensure from occurring. Our industry tends to run on backroom deals, on handshakes that fit pros don't really have a hand in. And that's something for a future podcast episode. But that is my perspective on that. It would be great, again, to hear some feedback from fit pros around different areas, different professions. And I have to say, as I'm wrapping this up here, I don't know what the answer is. Do I think it's a major issue? I'm not even sure of that. For reasons I pointed out with each of these, regarding credentialed individuals or even those that provide poor instruction or managing, that I don't know what the outcome would be. I don't know what the right answer is. Thinking about the individual, go back to that. Will the individual benefit? I'm not sure. Will the fitness instructor benefit? I'm not sure. But again, this is one that it's an open conversation. Would love to hear what other fit pros think. But until the next one, I'll see you in the next episode. Hey Fit Pros, it's your host Tyler Valencia here. I quickly want to share a free resource we have on the KIPS website and YouTube channel. If you're struggling with your online workouts or just want to see the items that we recommend, check out our virtual training resources page. You'll find breakdowns on streaming setups, reviews on microphones, and other free videos that can help you build your fitness business today. Did I mention they're free? Go check them out at the link in the description or head over to our website to find them under the blog tab.